who's that guy? Jocko? You ever see his deal where he's like, good, right? Like, that's the situation we're in right now. Like, good. Like, however it comes, we're excited about that opportunity just to get to go compete. And like I said before, it's not supposed to be easy. So the challenge is what makes it more fun. I think anything that I've ever accomplished in my life that was easy, I'm not near as proud of.
Hello and welcome in. It's always college football. We appreciate you being here. It is Tuesday, December 10th, and we hope that your week is off to a tremendous start. We really look forward to our conversation that we're going to have today with the head coach of the Oregon Ducks. It's Dan Lanning. So that'll be a good visit with him. We look forward to that. The transfer portal is open and got a lot of statistics on the transfer portal that we will get to. But at this time, the second we tape this show, the second we even have a sentence come out of our mouth, that information is already dated. So we decided to make a little bit of a gamble here to avoid discussing up to the minute transfer portal news and just wait for the dust to settle just a little bit longer. And then we will have a full reaction on what the transfer portal looks like as we move forward a little bit further. So you can plan on a transfer portal show, an exclusive transfer portal show at some point, either later this week or early next week. But we know late next week will be meant for previews of not just bowl games, but also previews on what's coming up in the college football playoff on the 20th and 21st. So we'll do all of that. We're also going to have Marcus Freeman join the show next week, the head coach of Notre Dame. So we look forward to that as well. So today is going to be a conversation with Dan Lanning, and then we are going to give you the most up-to-date breakdown of what's gone on in the coaching carousel, because there's a lot. There's a lot of movement, but things are starting to calm down just a little bit there. We feel like that is more appropriate to discuss here before the portal goes completely haywire. So let's dive in, and we'll kick things off with a conversation with the head coach of the Oregon Ducks, it's Dan Lanning. Well, he's the number one seeded head coach, Dan Lanning, joining us here on Always College Football. Coach, congratulations on an amazing year. Look, I can't say a lot of us are like super surprised with what you've been building towards, but now doing it in a different league and doing it with the players that you have is pretty remarkable. So if you could just kind of reflect back on what's been accomplished here over the last few months, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Maybe more than anything, the connection that we have on this team, right? Like, you know what it's like as a player going out there and working every single day, and, you know, to see that hard work come to fruition and have some success, you're just really excited for those guys, you know, and the journey, you know, because everybody sees the game, right? Everybody sees Saturday. What they don't see is, you know, in the middle of the winter with the frost on the field out there working your tail off. They don't see the weight room. They don't see the trials and the hardships that exist throughout the season. So for those guys to have success in you know, in a place where, you know, we had to, you know, battle our way to get into the conference, you know, and create that success, I think that's a lot of fun for our group.
Yeah, I think people in the Big Ten probably wish they would have put up a little bit more of a fight to let you guys in.
Glad they didn't.
It's worked out well for everybody. Coach, looking at your roster, and there was quite a bit of turnover, but some of the pieces that you were able to target and bring in have helped take what was a great group already and taken it even to a higher level. So when you started this off season and said, all right, we need this, we need this, we need this, what were some of the biggest priorities for your roster? Because you weren't that far away last year, but now you've clearly taken it to the next level.
Yeah, I think I don't want to say depth. I wanted to be able to say, like, just the overall numbers, the amount of people that can play winning football for us. Like, I thought we had a really good group last year that could play winning football, but when you start to work into the next guy up and needed, like, we've created a rotation on the defensive line. I think that's really important, right? To be able to have guys that aren't playing 70 snaps a game, but have guys that can play 40 really quality snaps a game is much more important. So having some of that depth and creating more players that could win, play winning football, I think that's a huge piece.
Being able to bring Dillion Gabriel in, and he's now, heading to New York as a Heisman finalist, and hopefully for y'all, he brings home the ultimate individual prize. Going and getting a guy like that a guy that had had success at his previous stop. Look, if everyone could just go out and get a outstanding, generationally important college quarterback like Dillion Gabriel, it'd be great. But you guys were the ultimate destination when I know he had a million suitors. How did you go and get him?
Yeah, I think that we lucked out in a lot of ways. There's a lot of common threads and common things that appealed to this place about Dillion. The history, the relative location to his family in Hawaii, the history of Marcus Mariota playing here. I think the success that we have with Bo, all those things, the system that we run offensively, I think all those things were enticing to Dillion, and obviously his experience was really enticing to us. The playmaking ability that he has was really enticing to us. So it was just kind of a perfect marriage.
It's amazing because if you look at how you guys attacked people last year, there's a lot of similarities with what Will did with Bo and Will's done with Dillion. But Dillion has traditionally been a guy that's like, I don't care, I'm throwing it deep. Forget your game management. I like the go ball on 3rd and 1. It doesn't matter. But I've seen a certain maturity with him this year that's kind of come to the forefront where it's like, all right, I don't have to be the guy that has the pedal pressed 100% of the time. Have you seen a growth similar as well?
I can only speak to my time here with Dillion rather than what, I got to see before. But I'm really impressed with this guy's ability to go through a progression. Like even on Saturday, this last game, it's 4th and 2, and he gets all the way back to number 5, which how hard that is as a quarterback and completes a ball to Ferg. When that's not his first read. He did the same thing on the touchdown pass to him to be able to work from the backside X to 3. So his ability to play quarterback the way it's supposed to be played has really impressed me. Going through progressions, identifying coverages. I'm really excited to see that. And I think that's something he's grown on, since he's been here and what we've challenged him to do as well.
It's really impressive, and he's clearly operating at a crazy high level. So the fact that he's playing as well as he is not a huge surprise to any of us. In order to get to number 5, the front has to be playing pretty well too. And I look at and I talked to Nick Saban about this just a couple of days ago at Selection Day. He said he believes that the national champion will come from a team that is able to dominate the trenches. And it feels like that's always been the case, but it feels like it might be even more the case now in a 12-team format. Do you agree with his assessment?
Well, I think physicality certainly matters. And I think you have to be able to run the ball effectively in postseason play. And I think that's a great indicator of dominating the trenches. But I will say that, in previous history, it seems like a lot of these games can end up being higher scoring games, right? It's hard to play defense right now in college football with what exists, with the schemes that are out there. So physicality is going to matter. That's going to be a huge piece of it. But the team that really doesn't beat themselves, right? The team that protects the ball, right, doesn't have unnecessary penalties. I think all those things will really add up during these last few weeks.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. How are you handling the calendar, Coach? It's a long year. Hopefully, you still have 3 more games to play. You've already played 13. It's a grind. You've had multiple bye weeks, which is helpful with this current format and the way this regular season worked out. But you now have a long layoff. Is that an advantage or a disadvantage, knowing that you don't have to play for more than 3 weeks?
Well, we're going to make it an advantage. We're going to make it an advantage with how we utilize that time. And there's a lot of chaos in college football. There's a lot of things going on right now where it still, goes with how are you building your roster for next season? How are you retaining your roster? So there's all those things that are happening as well that are really important to us. But we'll utilize, some of this time the coming weeks similar to a bye week. And this gives you a really great opportunity to do a hard evaluation, self-scout of your program. Like, what are we really good at? What are we not good at? And the good thing about having bye weeks is that we've kind of got that format laid out, but now you get a chance to do even a deeper dive of what that looks like. And then visiting with some other coaches, this is going to be very similar to an NFL team, having a bye in the first round and having 2 teams they can play. So I've talked to, some teams about that. What's that look like? How do you prepare differently? Game planning for the future. So we're going to get a chance to break down a lot of teams and look at them moving forward and prepare ourselves for that moment.
Well, that's one aspect I was curious about, and you have been a guy that's been very active in the portal in the past. I did think that was one benefit from a calendar standpoint, as much of a disaster as our calendar is. Hopefully it gets fixed at some point, who knows when. But at least you're not in game plan mode the week that the portal opens, right? Yeah. I guess that is an advantage to getting that first round bye, even more so than missing the game, but for your staff to be able to focus on, all right, who's going in, who might we want to entertain, and how do we make sure our guys don't go in at the same time? Is that a benefit that maybe not enough people are talking about?
Well, I think anything can be a benefit depending on how you use your time, right? So it's not so much about like, is this challenging time in college football? Yeah. Our challenge is, can we do it better than anybody else, right? How are we utilizing this week? There's some other team in the nation that has the same amount of time. How are they utilizing it compared to us? And we want to do it better. So we hope we can make that a benefit for how we utilize it.
Yeah, I love the way that your messaging, even in this interview, is coming through, because every challenge is actually an opportunity, you know. And I love that you said that when we visited with you on selection day. Many people saying, well, you know, Oregon has been the seeding is a problem. Oregon's got tougher second round matchup potentially than the team they beat in the Big Ten. Like, to me, that's like, all right, fine. So I play them in round 2. I play them in round 4. I got to win games against good teams to win a championship. Like, that's the way I think of it. I feel like that's the way you think of it too. But what would you say to those that are looking at the path and thinking, well, theirs is hard, theirs is more manageable. I'd rather have the more manageable path. What's your message?
I mean, it's going to make this fun for us, right? I mean, who's that guy? Jocko? You ever see his deal where he's like, good, right? Like, that's the situation we're in right now. Like, good. Like, however it comes, we're excited about that opportunity just to get to go compete. And like I said before, it's not supposed to be easy. So the challenge is what makes it more fun. I think anything that I've ever accomplished in my life that was easy, I'm not near as proud of, right? The things that are hard, like that's the stuff that, really has built me and certainly the stuff that's built our program.
Knowing that you have been in the SEC, you've been in the Big Ten, you were in the Pac-12 for a number of years. I've always felt like playing the gauntlet prepares you for situations like this. I think others have felt, well, if you can get through the gauntlet and it's not as challenging at the end of the year, you're healthier, I kind of want to be calloused at this point of the year, frankly. Like, I want to have taken a couple punches in the face because I know I'm going to take a few in the playoff. I don't want it to be the first time I taste my own blood. So do you feel like, having played in the Big Ten, you are more prepared for a postseason setting than maybe where you might have been previously, or some other leagues that some teams might be coming out of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this league is certainly a challenge, right? And I think you said it, like, we've won some games that were tight, right, in resilient ways and tough battles. And I think those tough battles will be really important for us down the stretch. It's certainly not going to get any easier, right? I think the challenge for us as coaches is you want to press, and make it challenging throughout the year. But now you got to make sure that you give your guys an opportunity to recover and be able to get that back. So you look at bowl games, and there's really some common stats that always show up, right? And I think the two things that matter the most are probably conditioning and tackling, right? Those are the things that go away. And I think a lot of times that's because people pull their foot off the gas during this moment. So we have to be really smart. We have to use sports science and track our guys really well and make sure we can get our legs back and be in the position we want to be. But we also got to go out there and practice tackling and condition the way we have to be successful in this bowl prep.
It is a long year, and I feel like human nature would be like, I got to give the guys a break. But like you referenced, gosh, when I watch bowl games or postseason games, there's a lot of missed tackles, man. There's a lot of bad angles, a lot of bad, it's just not, it's advantage offense, I feel like, in the postseason. So how do you balance the need for recovery after a 13-game grind and the need to stay sharp and maintain the momentum that you've created throughout the regular season with your bowl practices?
Yeah, great question. I think first off, we try not to, in our building, make emotional decisions. So I try to lay the schedule out long before we get to that point, right? What do I think it needs to look like at this point? And then know that as a coach, you got to be adaptable. But we'll have a lot more good on good work here early on, almost similar to like fall camp practices where you get our best versus our best. And we're developing guys within our roster. And again, just really more self-evaluating us. It's not going to be about anybody that we're playing, just going out there playing good football. And we'll do that early on here for bowl prep. And then as we get closer to opponents, we'll start to evaluate what are the schemes that we need for these teams that we're carrying going forward. What are the challenges they're going to present, and how can we recreate that in practice? But it is a fine line. We've given our guys a little bit of time here after the game, but we're certainly going to get some work in this week. It won't be we're not singing Kumbaya the entire week and hanging out in the meeting room. We're just having meals together. We're going to get some work in. So, and our guys want that. Like, our guys want our best. Like, they want our coaches' best. They want to give their best. So that's probably what excites me more than anything, is I know how hungry these guys are.
Yeah, I would imagine. So you referenced getting together, singing Kumbaya and stuff like that. I wouldn't, probably not envisioning that, not from you at least. But I am curious, will you get together and watch on the 21st, Tennessee and Ohio State? Sometimes I would imagine coaches probably make some type of competition out of it. Like you have guys in the room pick a side, and whoever loses have to do extra up downs or something. Like, are you gonna watch that game together and create some drama, I guess, within your own locker room?
I'm not. I want to watch that game on my own, in front of my iPad, making my notes without anybody else bothering me, right? And so we'll have a practice that morning. We'll get some work in that morning, and then we'll give the guys the opportunity to be able to watch the game. I can promise you, every one of our players is going to be watching it, so they'll be engaged on it. But I don't want to watch it in a room with anybody else. I want to be able to lock in and take notes.
Fair enough. Looking at the possibility of playing Ohio State for the second time. Obviously not giving them the win by any stretch. So Tennessee fans, before you come at us, there's not some assumption, just talking simply about playing an opponent twice. You've played them once already. You were victorious. It was an Autzen. As a coach, how do you guard against over analyzing that first tape and that first time that you played against each other, and maybe outthinking yourself a little too much in the event in which you get to game plan against them again?
Yeah, I think that's always the challenge as a coach, right? Every one of us always wants to add new wrinkles and build off of what we've seen before. I think, the best coaches understand what they're good at, right? And they understand that they have to be able to carry their best into a game, and it's not always just about the opponent. So that'll probably be a lot of our focus, especially early on for us in our bowl prep, is what are we good at? What are we not good at that we have to have? What do we have to be able to carry it to be successful, and focus on improving those things. And then it's always a challenge when you play great teams that have great coaches, right? And who has the pen last a lot of times can win. So can you make sure that you prepare your team for those moments to where they can go out and execute at a high level? And I know whatever team we end up facing, it's going to be a real challenge, which certainly will be fun for us.
No, it'll be a blast. Coach, I know, and we'll get you out of here in a moment, but the opportunity to play in the Rose Bowl will be special. I, for one, as a diehard fan of college football, I know you feel similarly. The home game environment is pretty neat. And I would love at some point, if we do expand further, to allow the number 1 overall seed the opportunity to play a game at home. I think that'd be pretty special. So is there any jealousy? Man, the Rose Bowl is incredible, and I'm so excited to have that opportunity, give my players that opportunity. But man, it sure would be pretty cool to have a game in Autzen too. So is that something you think about? I
mean, I think about a lot of things, but I try to focus on what I can control. Ideally in my mind, what would look great for the playoff is if we didn't have such a long break between games. I think it's great for recovery. I think that's awesome. But if everybody faces the same challenge, I think it's really weird that the championship game is in the middle of January and school's already started and newcomers have moved in. I just don't think any of it lines up with our map. In my mind, the championship game would be unbelievable if that was on the 1st, right? December or January 1st. That's when the championship game was played. And really the teams that have positioned themselves have home games all the way up until that game. That would make a lot of sense to me. But I think there's a lot of bowls that would be really frustrated with that. So we're excited to play in the Rose Bowl. I've never been in the Rose Bowl, so that's going to be fun for us. But this won't be your normal bowl game environment either. You remember those moments where you go 5 days in advance and you're going to Disney World. Hey, it's another game week for us, right? Let's go play football. We'll eat a nice meal somewhere, I'm sure. There's other events that we'll have to do. But I'll be locked into that hotel until we can step on the field and go play that game.
I believe it, man. No doubt about it. You'll have a blast. The Rose Bowl, it does not disappoint. Whatever anyone's told you about how great it is, it's better than that, which is hard to imagine. It really is. You'll have a great time, and I know your team will perform beautifully in that environment. Congratulations on all your success. Could not be happier for you, and really looking forward to seeing your team compete on January 1st.
Appreciate it, Greg. Have a great one.
Okay, great visit there. But let's dive into the coaching carousel, and what a strange carousel it's been. Even when they decided to fire guys or see guys retire or let guys go, it's just been a strange carousel. There have been times when you thought people were going to leave and then they didn't, and there were times when you thought guys were going to get fired and they didn't, and they were retained, and it's just been wild so far. But not a ton of super marquee jobs that have come open, but still some pretty good jobs nonetheless, and some big names that are attached to some key jobs. Let's dive in. Let's kick things off with North Carolina because it might be the best job available. It might be open to interpretation depending on your perspective. But I look at North Carolina. I've always felt like it's a place that you can win, but why, for whatever reason, they haven't won, I've never really been able to figure that out. They've won at times, but they haven't won consistently, and they didn't do so under Mack Brown either. Mack Brown says he's coming back. Mack Brown says, nah, maybe not so much anymore. Mack Brown's basically fired, so they can basically write him a big check so that he will retire. Mack Brown is in his early 70s, so it makes some sense, which means it absolutely makes perfect sense to replace a 73-year-old with another 73-year-old and Bill Belichick. Why wouldn't we go in that direction? Now, no one is going to question Bill Belichick's acumen, nor will we question how good Bill Belichick is as a football coach. My question is, if you just let a guy go that has comparable challenges, then why are we bringing in a guy that is also in his early 70s to invigorate life into the program? And I know that we as a sport in college football have migrated ever so slightly towards becoming more professionalized, but it doesn't mean that I'm wanting to bring in a guy that can't be at my program for the next 10 to 15 years. Like every time I would make a hire, I want a guy that's going to be there for 10 plus years. That would be my goal. But with Bill Belichick, is it safe to assume he'll coach into his early 80s? Probably not. So while it sounds like Bill Belichick is very interested, I think North Carolina should strongly consider maybe going with a slightly younger candidate with a little bit more experience, having dealt with college-age players in the past. Just saying, I don't think it's a great idea. We'll move next to Purdue, another big-time job that was open. Well, big-time job. I've heard Purdue is actually a far more attractive place than one might assume as far as the amount of money they have in their NIL. That was, according to friends that I have in the industry, that Purdue is more well-equipped to compete on a big stage than you realize. My question is, well, if they're more well-equipped to compete on a big stage, why haven't they competed on a big stage? I know they've made it to the Big Ten title game. I know they've had some success. That was under Jeff Brom, and he did a great job there. They now have gone to Ryan Walters. Ryan Walters gets fired after 2 years. They now have hired Barry Odom. I think this is a good hire for Purdue. If I'm Purdue, I feel good about it. I look at Barry Odom's track record. Was he prematurely fired at Missouri? Potentially. Has he had some success at UNLV? Absolutely. Been to back-to-back conference championship games at a place that had never experienced success like that. Had a quarterback walk out on a mid-year. Still was able to backfill that with Haj Malik Williams, and they still made a run. So I think Barry Odom's a really good coach, and I like the hire for Purdue. My big question about this one is, why this one, Barry Odom? Asking the coach that, because I look at Purdue and I have not seen Purdue have a ton of success outside of a few pockets where they had Drew Brees and Jeff Brom in a, let's call it what it is, a remarkably weak Big Ten West. Now that we're in an era in which you don't have to play in divisions anymore, the job at Purdue, I think, gets more difficult, and I don't view it as a destination. I think it's a place where you're going to go and have your hands full pretty much every single week, because I don't think you're going to have the personnel that the teams you're playing against will have on a week-to-week basis. Now, you might have NIL resources. I hope that you do, but I don't know if it's the most attractive landing spot. And I was surprised, frankly, when Barry Odom decided to take this one. We'll go next to West Virginia. Still up in the air. But the name that continues to pop up is Rich Rodriguez. A reunion appears imminent. There's a lot of supporters of the West Virginia program that are pushing for Rich Rodriguez. And I think most people remember back to when Rich Rod was the head coach at West Virginia a million years ago, and they think back to a time in which things were really great. I think that's understandable. I also think Rich Rod would win if he got the job at West Virginia. And when I survey the landscape, it's not like there's an obvious candidate for West Virginia. So I can understand why people would want to go back to the well and hire the guy that was there in the past when they had some of their best years ever. I think it's a smart move. I'd hire Rich Rodriguez in a heartbeat if I were West Virginia. I think it makes sense. I think he has clearly shown the ability to adapt to the modern day offense, even though he's still going to use quarterback run and all the exciting things that made West Virginia must-watch TV there at the end of his tenure. I think he's going to still be able to do a lot of the things that ultimately land him the job at Michigan. So Rich Rodriguez, should he have ever left? Probably not. but he has reinvented himself in many ways at Jacksonville State. And I would be surprised if he doesn't get a good, long, hard look at West Virginia. One of the most interesting aspects of what I just described is a reunion that success happened before. It can surely happen again. Well, that's what they're hoping for at UCF, where after Gus Malzahn resigned to become the OC at Florida State, they go back to the well and they hire Scott Frost. I think this hire is rock solid. I just don't know right now what Scott Frost is going to do from a staff standpoint. And I do think that this UCF job is one of the most attractive jobs that is open in this cycle. I think there was probably a bunch of people that were very interested in having an interview or being pursued. And I think Scott Frost, considering he had success there a handful of years ago, would be excellent. I just don't know what he's been doing the last couple of years. I know he spent time in the NFL. Has that altered his philosophy offensively? Is he going to go and do some of the things that they had success with in the past, the hyper speed tempo, finding speed all over the field? Is that going to work in the Big 12? I don't know the answers to any of that, but I'm happy for Scott Frost to get an opportunity to go back to a place where he had tremendous success. He just couldn't turn down the Nebraska opportunity. There's too many reasons why, 25 million of them to be exact. So I understand why you had to take the Nebraska job when it came open, but I still think that Scott Frost probably wonders, man, if I had never left UCF, what could I have built it into? I think all of that is completely fair. So happy that he gets this second chance. Appalachian State hired Dowell Loggains. Dowell Loggains is credited with a pretty remarkable year offensively at South Carolina. Now, I think if you ask a lot of people and a lot of fans of the South Carolina program, they would say, oh, well, good riddance. I actually thought Dowell Loggains did a really good job offensively, creating misdirection. Let's be real. He had a below average, by SEC standards, a below average receiving core. He had a quarterback that could do a lot of amazing things. He had an average offensive line, and yet they found a way to finish in the top 15 in the country, according to the College Football Playoff Committee. Now, the defense gets a lot of credit. The offense doesn't get as much, but he did a lot of nice things. And if you look at some of the plays that he was able to call and how often he got guys open and how often he created lanes to run through in the run game, you'd probably be pretty impressed. You look statistically at the numbers, probably not going to blow you away. But I think Dowell Loggains, having come from the NFL, is a really good hire for Appalachian State, a place that's won a lot of football games for a very long time. Just needing a little bit of a change, a little bit of a tweak philosophy from a philosophy standpoint. I think Dowell Loggains, though, having coached in the NFL, having coordinated offense in the NFL, will be helpful in making this transition. Willie Simmons gets the head coaching job at FIU. Probably should have happened several years ago. Mike McIntyre became the head coach. He was fired. But him and Willie Simmons were both finalists for the job a handful of years ago. The job went to McIntyre, but now Willie Simmons gets it after being the running backs coach at Duke for the last couple of years. I looked, though, at Willie Simmons and what he did at Florida A&M. At Florida A&M, he was 45-13, which is pretty remarkable. Won the SWAC championship last year, and now, after 1 year at Duke, is going to be returning home to help jumpstart a program that has had some success at times. I think his ability to relate to the players and his track record will make FIU a far more attractive destination for kids that play football in South Florida. East Carolina decided to take the interim tag off of Blake Harrell, who went 4-0 as the interim head coach, replacing Mike Houston. Now, I do think it's interesting because every time there's an interim coach involved, they're always going to have the support of the players within the program. So you got to be careful with this because, of course, the players in the program want the interim to become the head coach. Why? Because they don't want some new guy coming in, deciding to change philosophy and getting rid of all the players that are currently employed there at the university. I shouldn't say employed, that are currently playing for the university. So it's understandable the players internally will always push the interim candidate. I don't know if this is the right move or not. I really don't. I think Blake Harrell did a really good job down the stretch. I think the defense all year did some nice things. The offense was a walking turnover for a vast majority of the season, and ECU still found ways to put themselves in position to potentially win games. But I'll be curious to see where this thing goes here in the years to come. Matt Entz becomes the head coach at Fresno State. I absolutely love this hire. Now, Jeff Tedford stepped down in the preseason because of health reasons. Matt Entz formerly was the head coach of North Dakota State, but he left last year to become the linebacker coach at USC. This is a guy that's won a handful of national championships and has done an amazing job. You also look at guys in the past that have transitioned from the top of the FCS to the FBS to the Power 5. Several have had success. What wins football games at the lower levels of the sport still wins football games at the highest levels of the sport. Look at the success that Chris Kleiman has had at Kansas State. Look at the success that Curt Cignetti has had at James Madison and at Indiana. Matt Entz, as a head coach at North Dakota State, had tremendous success as well. I believe that he can have it again at Fresno State when they eventually join the Pac-12 here very, very soon. Southern Miss hired Charles Huff. Super surprised that this was able to go down. Like, this is pretty amazing. Huff and Marshall just won the Sun Belt. He finishes up his tenure at Marshall 32-20. So to be able to go and get a guy in that league that had just won the conference championship, you want him to come home, that is pretty dang remarkable. You want him to come back to the Southeast, pretty dang remarkable. Maybe Huff acknowledged that maybe this Marshall roster was built to win this game, and maybe there'd be a pretty big drop-off next year. Maybe he recognized that the time was running short there if they could continue winning at the level that they were winning at. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know Marshall's roster like the back of my hand. I do know this, though. That's a huge coup for Southern Miss. Southern Miss has struggled for a really long time, but there have been great pockets of success, and that has been a launch pad for coaches in the past. I would not be that surprised if it's a launch pad for Charles Huff as well, assuming he can find some success there in Hattiesburg. Of course, that leaves UNLV open, that leaves Marshall open, and then another job in which a conference championship winning coach is now on the move. That would be at Ohio. Tim Albin has left to become the head coach of the Charlotte 49ers. This one surprised me also. I understand that maybe from a perception standpoint, moving from the MAC to the AAC, or the American Athletic Conference, probably don't want to call it the AAC. It sounds too much like the ACC. Big difference there. The American Athletic Conference, I know that there is a pretty big difference, but Albin had won 10 games a year for the last 3 years. He is 30-10 since 2022 and is fresh off bringing home the first championship there to Athens, Ohio since 1958. This is pretty significant to be able to go and get a coach with this type of track record at Charlotte, a place that had not really had a whole lot of success. I mean, the best year in recent memory was when Will Healy took him to the Bahamas Bowl. That was a million years ago. So we'll see whether or not Albin can get the job done, but this was a pretty great hire by Charlotte, and one that I was surprised to see when that name went across the bottom line, that Albin would be taking this job. You'll look at a few others before we get you out of here. Temple hired Casey Keeler from Sam Houston State. Really good hire, I feel like. He does have success, Keeler does, having coached at Delaware. He also has success at what he did at Sam Houston, but now taking over at Temple for Stan Drayton takes over one of the hardest jobs in America. But in success, it's a launch pad. Jeff Collins gets a Power 5 head coaching job. We have seen Al Golden get a Power 5 head coaching job. Manny Diaz got a Power 5 head coaching job from Temple. I'd say that tongue-in-cheek. He was there for like 3 days and became the head coach at Miami. And then, of course, Matt Rule got the Baylor job after a couple years at Temple. So maybe this will be an opportunity for Casey Keeler to go and revitalize and restore Temple football. But, man, that's a tough job. That is a really, really tough job that he is going to be stepping into. A few other hires that I really liked. There are others, but we won't get into all of them. Zach Kittley taking over for Tom Herman at FAU. I do find it a little bit interesting. Zach Kittley, the last couple of years, has been credited at Texas Tech, and even in his time before that at Western Kentucky. This guy is one of the great innovators of the offensive side of the football. And he's done a lot of really impressive things with quarterbacks over the last few years. Will that continue? Felt like it was kind of a strange fit. When Tom Herman took that, felt like it was a bit of a strange fit, but I thought he could probably get it going. The guy had track record at Houston of winning, won at Texas, but just didn't win enough. So I was a little surprised that it didn't work at FAU, but now they go back and they try to create some excitement offensively with Zach Kittley. So maybe he'll be the right guy for the job. And I can't say it's that dissimilar to Lane Kiffin. You go hire an offensive coordinator that had a ton of success. Obviously, Lane Kiffin, much bigger name than Zach Kittley at the time of his hiring at FAU, but a guy that had a ton of success offensively at Alabama and then parlayed that success at Alabama into success at FAU and then parlayed that into the job at Ole Miss. Maybe Kittley, tons of offensive success at Texas Tech and Western Kentucky. Now an opportunity to parlay that into offensive success at FAU as well. Still a few other openings that are undecided. You still have Tulsa that's open after they fired Kevin Wilson. You have Central Michigan that's opened after Jim McElwain decided to retire. So a handful of other openings that are on the list as well. And we will keep you posted as best we can with where those job searches go. That'll do it for us here at Always College Football. Encourage all of you to like, to rate, and to subscribe to the show. We very much appreciate all of the support that you've shown us over this entire season, and we encourage you to tell your friends because we're going to be continuing to follow the college football world from here until the national championship. We're just a few days away from giving you a transfer portal breakdown. We're also just a couple days away from previewing bowl games and all the college football playoff first-round games, which will be coming up here in just a few days. So for all of us here at Always College Football, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, I'm Greg. We hope you have an awesome day, and remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.